Adapting vintage lenses on this old Nikon 1V1 is fun, but it has its quirks, serious quirks. Let's start with the most obvious change, the crop factor. This is a 50mm lens, but on the V1's tiny sensor, it's no longer a nifty 50. With a 2.7 times crop, you are looking at a 135mm equivalent. It becomes a medium telephoto, perfect for details, portraits, or compressed landscapes, but it kills any idea of wide angle. That's why the native Nikon 110mm f2.8 pancake is still my favorite for walking around. This is for a different job. And that's really the core idea of adapting to the Nikon 1 system. You are not looking for normal lenses anymore, you are hunting for specific looks. That old Nikon 50mm becomes a portrait lens, an old 28mm becomes a standard 75mm, a 135mm becomes a super telephoto. You have to think backwards. The system's biggest weakness, the crop factor, becomes its biggest strength for adaptation, because it breathes new life into forgotten telephoto primes. It's not the only lens I've tried. I also have a Pentax SMC M150mm. On this camera, that becomes a 405mm equivalent. It's a massive super telephoto prime. The reach is insane, but without any stabilization, it's practically a telescope mounted on a tripod. It turns the V1 into a dedicated long-range camera for birds or details on a mountainside, but it also magnifies every tiny shake. This is where the idea gets really interesting. You can pick up these old solid Pentax M lenses or similar ones from Olympus or Canon FT for every little money and get insane focal lengths that would cost a fortune in modern stabilized glass. My Pentax 150mm has a bit of fungus on the optic from my own mistake of not storing it properly. This makes the photos look a bit misty with lower contrast, like a built-in filter. I reckon it makes the results look a bit filmic, which is a character you either lean into or try to avoid. It's part of the vintage gamble. Apart from the fungus, this lens just isn't as contrasty as my Nikon 50mm, even when clean. It renders a flatter, softer image by design. The Nikon 50mm is solid, but it's mostly plastic. It's big on the small V1 body, but that size has one accidental benefit. It turns the whole camera into a stable platform. It sits perfectly flat on any table. This isn't just a trivia point, it's critical for how you end up using it. Now let's see what these combinations actually look like in motion. I recorded some video samples to show you the character and the challenges. I just woke up. This is my first talking head on this channel, and it happens to be on the Nikon 1V1 with a Nikon 50mm f2. Yeah, and I'm recording the audio with my iPhone. Say something. No. As you can see, when stabilized, the look is really unique, but you also saw how impossible handheld is. That leads to the first major problem, infinity focus. my cheap $10 adapter isn't machined to perfect tolerances, so when the lens barrel says it's at infinity, it's often lying. True infinity is usually a millimeter back from the hard stop. This means for landscapes or anything distant, you can just crank the ring to the end and trust it. You have to focus manually, and the V1 offers no modern tools to help you. There is no focus peaking to highlight sharp edges. The real limitation is this: you cannot zoom in on the live view at all to check focus. The only way to check your focus is to take the photo, then zoom in on the captured image to see if you got it right. So the process is you guess the focus, take the shot, review it, zoom in, see that it's wrong, delete it, adjust the focus, and try again. It's a slow, tedious loop of guessing, shooting, and checking, relying entirely on your eye, judging a small screen or viewfinder in the moment. Because of this, I miss focus constantly. I'll think I have it nailed on my subject, but in the final image, the sharpness lands somewhere unintended. Take this shot, for example. My intention was the center, but the actual point of focus is down here in the bottom left corner. I simply couldn't tell on the camera's display in the moment. To make matters worse, my V1 screen has a little vignette. It's noticeably darker around the edges. This tricked me into consistently overexposing my shots. I'd look at the live view, see a darker looking image, and add exposure to compensate, only to find the final photo was much brighter and washed out than what I saw. I wasn't judging the real exposure, I was compensating for a faulty screen. So you are battling two layers of guesswork, focus by imprecise sight and a post-shot review loop, and exposure based on a misleading preview. It's a humbling process that forces you to learn the camera's specific flaws. And speaking of manual, shooting fully manual on the V1 is a test of patience. Changing the ISO requires a deep dive into the menu every single time. There is no dedicated button, no quick dial. You are committing to a setting, or you are spending minutes in sub-menus. So here is my workflow to find the menu system. Since changing ISO is a pain, I decided to fix it. I lock my ISO at 400 for photography. That way, my only controls are shutter speed and aperture. It simplifies everything. For daylight, I shoot between f4 and f11, and I keep my shutter speed at least at 1/250th to compensate for the shake at 135mm. This rigid method turns the camera into a true manual tool. Now, my honest feelings after going out and shooting. I didn't expecting to enjoy adapting, but I did. It was actually so much fun, especially with the Nikon 50mm. My Pentax M1 50mm does not render the same image quality. I have reviewed this cheap Nikon lens. You won't regret getting one. However, the 150mm Pentax M, I did not really enjoy it. 405mm is just too much, but obviously you get the privilege of that extra reach. I will probably use it occasionally, changing from Pentax M1 50mm back to the Nikon 50mm gives me a sense of relief. I almost forgot that 50mm here means 135mm. I got so used to a 28mm focal length with my Nikon 10 pancake, I did not expect to enjoy 135, but I did. So, would I recommend this for photography? Well, not for everything, but for a specific slow, deliberate style, absolutely. For controlled portraits, detailed landscapes on a tripod, or even street photography where you preset your zone. It works. The Nikon at 135mm is a wonderful focal length for storytelling, but for me I enjoy it most for video. Where this combo surprised me was with video. The 135 field of view is cinematic and the manual focus forces you to be intentional, but here are the brutal limitations. The V1 only does 1080p, it has no in-body stabilization whatsoever, and it's only 10 megapixels for stills. Handheld video is unusably shaky. A tripod or a solid surface isn't an accessory, it's a mandatory part of the kit. This is doubly true for the 150mm Pentax. And my V1 has its own personal quirk. The microphone is dead. It records silent videos. Consider this a fair warning if you pick up a used one. Check the audio. It's a common point of failure. I guess I'll see you guys in the next video. Until next time, keep snapping and keep it budget tight. Au revoir.